Shalom, everyone. On Wednesday, we started the laws of carrying objects from one domain to the other, from a public domain to a private domain, and vice versa, and also carrying in the public domain for more than 6 feet approximately. So now Rabbi Melamed is going to explain a little bit more about what these rashuyot, these domains, are all about. So just one more note. In the time of the Talmud, in the time of the Mishnah, most houses were part of a small courtyard, which was called Mavoi in the Gemara. Mavoi literally means to come through. So there was a gate to each one of these little communities. And if you've ever been in Nachalat Shiva, a neighborhood in Jerusalem, one of the first neighborhoods to be outside of the walls, that's exactly how every street was formed. So there was a main street for everybody to walk in, but if you lived or you were a guest of somebody in this mavoy, in this chatzer, then you would have to either make pre-arrangements for somebody to unlock the gate for you, or during the day it was open for everybody to come in, but you were only considered a guest if you weren't living there, and of course, if you were living there, that was your domain. So it's a little bit more than just one house. It was traditionally 5 or 6 houses, and like I said, if you go to Nachalat Shiva, some of those communities are still exactly the same way that they were 140 years ago. And in the middle of the Chatzer was also a well, and the well was considered public because it's a domain of its own. So you would not be allowed to draw water if there wasn't a proper arrangement for that well to be used on Shabbat. So, a Reshut Yachid, a private domain, is an area enclosed by walls which render it a single place, and one may carry objects in this enclosed area. Even a large area surrounded by walls is considered one place, and there is no fundamental difference whether an object is located on its east or west side. That's just an example. The classic example of Reshut Yachid is a house. Though an area may be considered a Reshut Yachid, a private domain, even without a roof, as long as it has walls, as long as it is enclosed by a barrier 10 tefachim high, approximately 2.5 feet, if I calculate it correctly, it is a Reshut Yachid. A pit that is 10 tefachim deep is also considered a Reshut Yachid, as is a rock or hill that is 10 tefachim high. So even if there's no wall surrounding it. So if you're on Masada, for example, the Masada whole mountain top is considered a Reshut Yachid because it is more than 10 tefachim high, which is again about 2.5 feet. Even if there are no walls surrounding the rock or hill, the fact that they are raised 10 tefachim from the ground puts them in the same category as something walled. We treat them as if they have walls that extend upwards beyond the top of the rock or hill. It's called gud achit, which means that the wall officially or imaginary goes all the way to heaven. It's a law also about Sukkot, but of course in a Sukkah you do have to have a covering. So to be defined as a Reshut Yachid, an area must be at least 4 tefachim wide, approximately 1 foot, 1 foot by 1 foot. Lacking this width and length, the area is not significant enough to be deemed a Reshut Yachid, only a Makom P'tur. So in the old days when they had sometimes a like a little post by the side of the road or the street, if you put an object that you took from Reshut Rabim into Reshut Yachid, and if you stopped in this Makom P'tur, we'll talk about that more next week. It should be noted that a sharp incline is considered a wall as well. So if the mountain top that you're in is I forget my trigonometry, but basically I think it's 25 degrees and more, that is considered also a Reshut Yachid. Even though most people are allowed to go in there without permission. So, back to the definitions. A Reshut HaRabim, a public domain, is an area that serves public needs such as streets, squares, markets, and intercity roads. To qualify as a Reshut HaRabim biblically, an area must be at least 16 amot wide, approximately 30 feet, and unroofed. So the Cardo in Jerusalem, which was the old marketplace, was actually roofed. So even though a lot of people went through it, there was argument at the time during the Hellenistic and Roman ruling whether the Cardo in Jerusalem was a Reshut Rabim or Reshut Yachid. Some add an additional condition: every day it must be traversed by 600,000 people, equivalent to the number of Israelites during our ancestors' travels in the desert, according to the Torah. Because in the Torah, when it says about the fact that we had a count, and in next week's parsha we're going to count the Jews again, it stayed around 600,000 people. The maybe leniency is that it doesn't have to be 600,000 men like it was in the Torah, but rather people, and even more lenient is that even if it's not 600,000 Jews, but also non-Jews. So as far as I know, Ocean Parkway in New York is considered such a biblical public domain, and you are not allowed to carry anything when crossing that road, even on Shabbat, because you are going from one domain to the other, crossing through a public domain. And I'm sure there's other roads that are such discussed, but of course on Shabbat there aren't 600,000 people going or driving through it because most of the people there are Shomer Shabbos. But the idea is that if it's a daily thing that 600,000 people go by, again by vehicle or by foot, that is what makes it a biblical Reshut HaRabim. In principle, all prohibitions on carrying are connected to Reshut HaRabim. Formulated in the negative, there is no Torah prohibition on carrying where there is no Reshut HaRabim. That's biblically. But like we said earlier this week, the Carmelite, which is a semi public domain, like the beach and other places, is also forbidden, but rabbinically not biblically. And formulated within a Reshut HaRabim, one may not carry an object more than 4 amot, and one may not transport an object from a private domain Reshut Yachid to public domain Reshut HaRabim, and vice versa. So, as today is Friday, and we tried to make a connection to the Parsha, I think this is something that we discussed a few times this week. Balaam says in a blessing instead of a curse, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Israel, how beautiful or amazing are your tents, the house of Jacob, mishkanotecha Israel, your dwellings, or mishkan, depends on the translation. And so Rashi comments, based on the Gemara in Bava Batra 60a, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov. He said this because he saw that the entrances of their tents were not exactly facing each other, so the privacy of people is very important already from biblical times. There's different explanations for it. One explanation is that it's because of Ayin Hara, the evil eye, meaning that if somebody sees what you have in your house, they will be jealous and cause you to have that negative feeling or aura. But it's also just very basic, if one of the people in the house is changing, so it goes beyond just the actual private domain. When COVID started, we were told that if you're going to turn on your video, please do not wear clothing that is inappropriate or immodest, and also don't expose yourself. So I'll just finish with a very cute story. One of my friends, his name is Bob, he worked for the government here in Fredericton, and when he was working from home, We saw him with a tie and a button-down shirt, and we said it's amazing that you're on Zoom and not not being disrespectful. And then he got up and showed us that underneath the camera he was wearing his boxer shorts. So it was very funny, but the idea of Ma tovu alecha, that the Jewish people may have even invented these privacy laws, and to have that respect for other people's privacy, I think is one of the biggest blessings for the people of Israel. And we'll stop here and open up for questions.